in our lives.
All it made me think of was sense of humor, and you want your kids to have a sense of humor, and where is that in the brain?
Ooh, I don't know.
And where is it in the brain? And then how did you get a sense of humor?
I have no idea. I think everyone that I know that has a decent sense of humor have been through some traumatic stuff. So I
Yeah.
think there's some correlation there. And so it's like, I'm trying to think of someone that doesn't have a good sense of humor. Maybe that's a better way to start this.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you just learned. For me, it was a tool. It was my key into getting into the social crowd because I figured out, and I've told this story in a different podcast, so I won't retell it, but I made a girl that I really like laugh in middle school. And that was like the bell. I'm like, oh, I'll just do this. I don't need to do anything. I mean, playing basketball came along later
Mhm.
on as an extra idea. But I'm like, I don't need to like study. Like people make fun of those kids who study. You're that kid.
Really?
And so I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And I definitely was smart and took school seriously, but it wasn't cool to take school seriously. But I knew I could make people laugh. And I just like, that was my go-to the point where it definitely inhibited my education. I was playing pranks on teachers and getting kicked out of classes all the time. And so it was like, it was tough for me because in my brain, I'm like, I'm just trying to fit in here. Like, what's wrong with this?
Mhm.
But looking back, it cost me some really good opportunities. Reminding me of a story that I'll tell you real quick. I remember, and it's kind of a sad story, but it's kind of like fun to look back on. I would joke so much. I was a class clown, and I think I was in middle school, or I may have been like fifth grade, like barely still in elementary, is when Columbine happened. And so, do you remember what year Columbine was?
Maybe 95,
Okay,
somewhere in
so I was
there.
6 years old, whatever grade I would have been in. So
Yeah.
I was in elementary for sure. Probably barely in elementary. Um, but I remember being terrified. Again, going back to parents don't explain things. I remember like just being on the couch and it was on the news, and my mom and her boyfriend were like, "Yeah, they shot up like all these kids at school." You like my mom's voice? That's how she was.
Yeah.
Hey,
Your
hey, look, there's
your
some.
grandma's so articulate, William. And your mom can barely speak.
She
Huh?
was slurring a bit. But she was like,
Mhm.
there's a shooting at school. And I remember just being like, what? Like, what happened? Oh, some kid came and like he's all crazy and he shot up all these kids. And I'm watching the news as this young kid and they're body bagging. And I'm like, is this a thing? And they're like, yeah, happens all the time. And then they showed on the TV the stats, like, this is the so and so murder this year. And I was like, what? Like, I remember just being like, I don't want to go to high school at all. And so I was freaking out. And then um, it was like a career day. Maybe that's why my memories are slewed. What's the
Mhm.
word here?
Skewed.
Skewed. There you
Yeah.
go.
And this
Thank
is
you.
going to end up being funny.
Oh,
You said it at the beginning.
no. It's not.
No? Oh.
It's not funny at all. But
Oh,
it's interesting
okay.
looking back on. But I remember freaking out and just being like, "What?" And the reason I was talking about the memory thing is I think that just lingered with me. And I remember we're having a career day, which I think wasn't by that time. I maybe had gotten to middle school, and I'd already established myself as a class clown kind of guy, so I was already built that reputation. And we're doing career day. They're talking about what we wanted to be when we grew up. And then they were asking each kid, what do you want to be? And they're like, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a cop. I want to be a doctor, right? All the basic stuff kids say. And when it got to me, I said that I wanted to be alive. And all the kids laughed. I was not joking.
Yeah.
All the kids laughed, and the teachers got mad at me. And they were like, Will, this is not the time to be saying things like that. Again, doubling my trauma. I'm like, what do I got to do to get some love around here? I was just like, they thought I was trying to, and everyone did laugh. And I remember thinking, like, that's literally like, I literally just wanted to get through high school alive. And they sent me home. And of course, my parents didn't come pick me up. They never had a home phone. So they're like, they suspended me. They call him, no one answers. And then they got the bright idea, the teachers, like, well, he rides the public bus home. Like, just send him home on the bus. We'll have your parents sign this letter, bring it back in a week when your suspension is over. And so I got home and I just didn't tell them. They never knew anyways. I just like took off during school hours and hung out with friends. But I'll never forget that. I'm like, why am I in trouble for like being scared of death? Like it was so like traumatic. And then I guess the ironic or funnier part is like growing up, like me and you've talked about this. I have a strange relationship with death, but I get it now. I understand it. And looking back, it's kind of funny because everyone thought I was joking. And that would be a kind of joke I would have said had I not been like traumatized by it. But yeah, again, I think had they explained to me, this doesn't happen a lot. You know what I mean? There were shootings in El Paso at the time, at one of the high schools there at Franklin, I think, or one of them. And so I just remember thinking like, this world is scary. I'm going to die. When I go to high school, there's a really good chance someone will kill me. And I didn't have any goals beyond high school. I did not at a young age at least. And
Yeah.
so I think that's maybe played a role in part of the reason why I didn't finish school or take school very seriously, or I never had any ambitions after high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you realize the world isn't as you want to paint a realistic picture of life, but that was a terrifying picture that wasn't realistic. That happens, but it's pretty rare. And there's, you know, life shouldn't be that scary to a young kid. But now that I understand that, I can like, oh, well, now I should go to college. Like I should have some dreams
Yeah.
now.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I was in college. I don't know what year because I told you I failed the first bunch of them, but I think I had some traction by
It was
then.
freshman year number
I think
3.
I was around 21. I don't know. I was starting to do okay, a little better. But yeah. So Columbine happened, and it was a big deal. But when you talk about the perspective of all the kids, that generation of kids that saw that and grew up in fear, and makes a lot of sense on what's going on.
Do you
now.
remember it affecting you at all in college, or was it kind of
not as bad? Not. There was an effect for everybody, I think, because I don't remember any school shootings before that. They definitely weren't.
They weren't publicized.
Yeah, they weren't publicized, weren't televised. That was a big deal. So I remember it, but it didn't. I could see it affecting school age kids. You're thinking you got to go through that.
Yeah, and they would just send us home a lot. 9/11, they sent us home. That happened when I was in middle school, and they were like, just everyone's being sent home. I'm like, what is going on? I remember like there's like planes flying in the buildings. Like this is all like important stuff. They always do these tests. I should totally have way more mental health issues than I have. And trust me, I have plenty of things that I work on at all times. But when I look back at some of the things I went through, I should be way more jacked up, and nobody would question it. Like the people that knew me, like that was that weird kid, like that smelled weird. They'd all be like, makes sense. So like, I mean, what does that say about me, right? It shows that I did work hard and I care about a lot of things. But I think it'd be very easy for me to be a weirdo, and people would just be like, oh, he's one of those. He's been through some stuff. And thank God I was able to figure some of the stuff out. But they always do studies like what made this like serial killer or this mass shooter what he is. It's stuff like this. Like when traumatic things happen and either parents, teachers, or support systems don't really do anything about it, it ends up making just a strange person that has no concept of how to deal with any of their emotions at all. And I was lucky to have great parents like you later on in life, and great parents like the Niantos, and great friends that did wonderful things like join the army and show discipline there, played basketball. I was friends with a lot of athletes that went on to play college ball or do different things, So I had the luxury of being very observant and being surrounded by really good people. And I also had this really unique way of taking the best parts of people. Again, going to the non-judgmental. I could meet someone that was really good at one thing and maybe wasn't the best person, but he had really good work ethic. And I would just take that work ethic part and incorporate it. And so I took a little bit of everyone. And I think if I had to give credit to something, it would just be all the people around me.
I think that's true. And I mean, that's what we preach a lot in the counseling, is that relationship. You can have a lot of bad relationships, but you find a few that really teach you how to relate and care about people and listen and communicate, and you just feel believed in and you feel safe, right? That safety. So you got little pieces of that. And it's hard to overcome because when you were little, you did not have that.
Yeah.
And so your working model of, do I trust people? Do I believe in people? Didn't have to get there. And that's where you said serial killers and people that do bad things, that's not in them. They're like, I don't trust people and I don't trust myself. And
they were babies at one point. Is that hard? Like think of like, what's the Jeffrey Dahmer or these guys. Like that at one point, that was someone's baby.
Yep.
And so it's like we always look and we vilify people, but very rarely do we get the opportunity, or we could if we tried. Like, why did this happen? I mean, what's going on? Like, how do we prevent this? I'm interested, kind of thing. It's just hard because like nobody would support you if you supported Jeffrey Dahmer when he was back alive, right? But hopefully, at least one of those people working in those prisons or whatever, I don't know if he got arrested, took the liberty of like, hey, what happened? What's going on with you? To understand that, right?
They do. They interview them, and I haven't studied the psychos or the serial killers as much. But there's this common theme of being disassociated, not having any empathy for people.
That's a
big one, right? No empathy for people, no connection. Something's wrong.
Your palms are sweaty, but hit the subscribe button already. Mom's spaghetti is red like the button to which you are heading to click on. Confetti.